prominent Yakuza clans, the Otani and the Gyaku. The streets are littered with violence and tension as the two factions fight for control. However, amidst the chaos, a glimmer of hope appears in the form of Shuichi Hyoka, a former colleague of Sogo and now a member of the police force. Through his intervention, the two rival clans can put aside their differences and make a truce. As the sun set on the prison gates, Shigehiro Uebayashi stepped out, a free man once more. He had served his time and had even claimed to have found enlightenment behind bars. As the guards bid him farewell, he promised them he would not return. But as he walked out, he was met by several of his loyal followers, waiting to take him away. Meanwhile, a piano teacher named Miu was escorting her young student home in a quiet residential neighborhood. As they approached the house, they were startled to find Uebayashi and his men standing outside. Without hesitation, they forced their way into the house, their intention clear: to take revenge on the prison warden, Tomioka. It turned out Miu was his younger sister. With ruthless efficiency, Uebayashi and his men set upon Miu, torturing her in their quest for information. Her screams echoed through the house, and her student watched in horror as they hurt her, leaving her to die a brutal and senseless death. As the sun set on the city, Shuichi sat across from Mao Chikata, discussing their next move. Mao, his partner, listened intently as Shuichi shared his plans to free her older brother, Toko, who was currently serving time as an informant. Despite their setbacks, Shuichi was determined to see him freed. But before he could put his plans into action, Shuichi received a surprise visit from the head of the Hiroshima police station, Mr. Keiji. The older man informed Shuichi that he would be transferred to investigate the recent murder of Miu, a young piano teacher. To make matters worse, Shuichi would be working alongside a police officer named Shigeru Yoshida, who was nearing retirement. At that moment, Shuichi couldn't help but feel a sense of unease, knowing that Mr. Keiji had played a role in the death of his former partner, Sogo. But despite his reservations, he knew he had to accept the case and track down the killer. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Gyaku clan, Uebayashi arrived to attend the funeral of one of his brothers. But instead of finding solace among his fellow clan members, he was met with insults and criticism from the clan's higher-ups, who blamed him for his recent imprisonment and warned him to learn from his mistakes. The top officials of the Gyaku clan also laid out their new plan, which focused on building their power through business and money. But Uebayashi couldn't accept this new approach. He felt that as a member of the Yakuza, it was their duty to fight for control of territory, not just engage in shady business deals. Meanwhile, Shuichi and Yoshida arrived at the scene of Miu's murder. They questioned Tomioka, her brother, who knew that Uebayashi was the killer. Then he shared with them that while Uebayashi was in prison, he had often been targeted by Uebayashi's wrath. And upon his release, Uebayashi had promised that Tomioka would never be able to live in peace. As the night descended upon the city, Shuichi made his way to a nightclub run by the Gyaku clan. There, he found two officials of the Gyaku clan and Otani clan enjoying a drink together. They assured Shuichi that he didn't need to worry about Uebayashi's presence, as he was just an insignificant member who could not disrupt their established peace. But as they spoke, the officials revealed that Uebayashi had a disturbing habit of killing his victims by gouging out their eyes. This information sent alarm bells ringing in Shuichi's mind, as it was clear that the same method had been used in Miu's murder. Just as their conversation was closing, Uebayashi and his gang arrived at the Gyaku clan's top brass gathering. He was accompanied by a business leader of the Gyaku clan, who was already threatening to submit to him. Seeing this, the leader of the Gyaku clan, Hajime Ishida, became furious with him, accusing him of not appreciating the efforts of the top officials. But Uebayashi retorted that Hajime and the other elite members of the Gyaku clan were not high-ranking figures that he would submit. The higher-ups of the Gyaku clan were intimidated by Uebayashi's power, as he was protected by the business head of the clan and known for his willingness to kill anyone who dared to oppose him. As the confrontation ended, Uebayashi returned to his headquarters, only to find Shuichi waiting for him. There, Shuichi asked him point-blank why he had killed Miu, knowing that he was the last person seen at the crime scene. But Uebayashi denied the accusations, claiming that he and his men had only stopped by Miyu's house to give her brother Tomioka a present. Despite Uebayashi's denials, Shuichi couldn't shake off his suspicions. He knew that he needed solid evidence before he could make an arrest. After leaving Uebayashi's headquarters, he set his sights on freeing Toko and enlisting his help to infiltrate Uebayashi's inner circle and gather evidence that would incriminate him in Miyu's murder. The following day, Uebayashi and his men marched on the headquarters of the Gyaku clan, intent on taking control by force. Seeing that, Hajime was furious but powerless to act as all of his men had been detained by them. As the hostile takeover was underway, Toko arrived at the headquarters. His presence was met with excitement from Uebayashi's men. Then Uebayashi brought him inside to see the situation, and there, he found Hajime and his wife being held captive in a dog cage. Uebayashi demanded that Hajime reveal the location of the Gyaku clan's weapons, but he refused. In response, he brutally tortured and killed both Hajime and his wife. Without a second thought, he disposed of the bodies in a nearby landfill and ordered Toko to bury them once the fire had died. Meanwhile, Shuichi and Yoshida were investigating the death of Miyu, a member of the Gyaku clan who was found dead in a manner that appeared like she was killing herself. The autopsy revealed new clues, including fingerprints of Uebayashi found at the crime scene. However, it was not enough to incriminate him as the killer. At that time, Shuichi and Yoshida were at a loss for leads in their investigation. As they left the autopsy room, they ran into a journalist named Kuriaki, who had followed Shuichi's progress on the case from the start. However, he didn't pay much attention to Kuriaki's presence, but Yoshida invited him to have dinner at his house. As they sat down to eat, Yoshida confided in Shuichi that he was particularly passionate about this case. He had always dreamed of working on a murder case and felt fortunate to have the opportunity to do so before his retirement. Shuichi was struck by Yoshida's enthusiasm and couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie with his colleague, especially since his previous partner, Sogo, had been killed by the Yakuza. Sometime later, Shuichi and Toko met at a diner to discuss Uebayashi's true intentions. Toko expressed his shock at discovering that Uebayashi had the mentality of a psychopath. He explained that he had no qualms about killing Hajime to become the leader of the Gyaku clan. Concerned about the danger, Shuichi asked him to keep him informed of Uebayashi's movements so they could work together to trap him and bring him to justice. Meanwhile, at a nearby tavern, Kuriaki, who had always been loyal to Shuichi, was revealed to be in league with Uebayashi. At that time, Uebayashi was searching for a powerful police officer to control the peace treaty between the two largest Yakuza clans in Hiroshima, and Kuriaki suggested Shuichi as a target. With this information, Uebayashi set his sights on Shuichi as his next victim. On the other hand, Mao, who was working, witnessed members of Uebayashi's gang causing chaos and assaulting the girls she worked with. Then she immediately warned them not to act recklessly in the territory of the Otani clan. So they had intended to harass Mao as well, but they were quickly confronted by the leader of the Otani clan, Toriyama Sasuke, who came to protect her, causing them to retreat. The next day, Toko was seen meeting with Uebayashi in his private quarters. Uebayashi questioned him about his younger sisters working in the Otani clan, but his attempts to explain were cut short as Uebayashi forced him to take drugs. The following day, as Mao was leaving for work, she was met by Sasuke and his men, who were there to protect her, but they were ambushed and shot by Uebayashi's gang, who had arrived in a car. Soon after, Shuichi arrived at the Otani clan's headquarters to check on the injured Sasuke, who had been shot by Uebayashi's gang. He tried to defuse the situation, warning the members of the Otani clan that starting a war would only lead to more violence and loss of life. But the Otani members were fueled by anger and desire for revenge, refusing to listen to his reasoning. In a desperate move to prevent the escalation of violence, Shuichi took drastic action. He overpowered one of the Otani members, holding his gun to their head, and threatened to arrest all of them if they chose to start a war. The members of the Otani clan, including Sasuke, were shocked by Shuichi's actions and saw a resemblance to the late Sogo, a powerful and respected leader. Then Shuichi went to meet with Hanazuma, a high-ranking member of the Gyaku clan, and warned him that Uebayoshi's behavior could lead to a war between the Otani clan and the Gyaku clan. However, he refused to listen, as he could not control Uebayoshi, who now held power and weapons within the Gyaku clan. Meanwhile, Toko was at a tavern with Uebayashi, where he gave Toko a mission to kill a policeman named Shuichi, as he posed a threat to Uebayoshi's position and plans to destroy the peace agreement between the two Yakuza clans. With no other choice, Toko was forced to accept the mission to kill Shuichi. That night, Toko visited Shuichi at a ramen shop and informed him that Uebayashi was planning to start an open war with the Otani clan. Initially surprised by his betrayal, Shuichi soon realizes that he has come to kill him. In a state of panic, Shuichi bolted from the scene as Toko relentlessly pursued him with the intent to kill. But as Toko closed in on him, Shuichi had a moment of clarity and began questioning his true motives. It was then that Toko revealed that he had been coerced by the ruthless Uebayashi to carry out the hit on Shuichi. Despite this revelation, Shuichi was still shocked and saddened when Toko pointed his gun at him, but to his surprise, Shuichi offered himself as a sacrifice and begged Toko to leave. Now wounded and in immense pain, Shuichi made his way to Mao's workplace and asked for assistance. The next day, he was hospitalized and under the care of Yoshida. During this time, Shuichi confided in Yoshida about a spy within Uebayoshi's ranks and warned him of Uebayoshi's plans to start an all-out war with the Otani clan. With a determined look on his face, Shuichi laid out his plan to trap Uebayoshi. He asked Yoshida to spread the word that he had been seriously injured in the shooting, and Yoshida quickly complied, informing the media of Shuichi's condition. Meanwhile, at Uebayoshi's headquarters, his gang rejoiced over the news of Shuichi's injuries, but he was surprised that Shuichi had not died and questioned Toko about it. Hearing that, Toko, caught off guard and confused, tried to explain the situation to Uebayoshi, but he only laughed and accused Toko of being in league with Shuichi. Desperate to prove his loyalty, Toko was forced to cut off one of his fingers at Uebayoshi's command, which only served to further entertain Uebayashi and his associates. But as Uebayashi indulged in his vices, he received a message from an informant revealing that his plan had been uncovered and that Toko was a traitor among his men. Meanwhile, Shuichi, resting in the hospital, received a phone call from Toko, who told him that Uebayashi would be moving that night. With this new intel, Shuichi prepared to stop Uebayoshi's plan. As his gang was about to launch their attack on the Otani clan, Uebayoshi borrowed Toko's bike and left before his gang with plans to attack Shuichi. As the police squad waited outside the Otani clan headquarters to arrest Uebayoshi's gang, Shuichi watched from his car but was caught off guard when Uebayashi appeared on Toko's bike and launched an attack on him. The fight between Shuichi and Uebayashi was intense and brutal, taking place under the pouring rain. There he taunted Shuichi, revealing that he had known all along about Shuichi's plan and Toko's role as a spy within his ranks. At that moment, Shuichi was at a disadvantage, still recovering from the injuries inflicted by Toko's bullet. But in a moment of desperation, he honked his car's horn, causing Uebayashi to flee and allowing the police to come to Shuichi's aid as he lay battered and bruised from the encounter. Meanwhile, Toko was waiting for his opportunity to strike but was taken aback when the members of Uebayoshi's gang stopped their vehicles on the side of the road instead of proceeding to their intended destination. Realizing that his cover had been blown, Toko tried to make a run for it, using the excuse of buying cigarettes for Uebayashi. But his escape was short-lived, as a gunfight broke out between him and Uebayoshi's associates, and Toko was ultimately shot and killed by Uebayashi. The next day, Shuichi went to Mao's house, where he was met with a throng of reporters and the sight of her weeping over Toko's corpse, which had been grotesquely mutilated. Shuichi, reeling from the shock of it all, couldn't help but stand in silence. He also noticed Kuriaki, who had been tailing him, and suspected that Kuriaki had been the one to leak information about Toko's true allegiance to Uebayashi. Desperate for justice, Shuichi went to the police station and reported Kuriaki's actions, but his superior, Mr. Keiji, dismissed his claims and decided to remove him from Miyu's investigation case. Furthermore, Mr. Keiji fired him and demanded that he turn over all documents related to cases he had handled before his dismissal. Sometime later, Shuichi visited Yoshida at his home, where he shared all of his experiences and knowledge gained while working in the Yakuza world. As Shuichi prepared to leave, he was confronted by Kuriaki, who had been following him. He demanded that Kuriaki come clean and tell the truth to the police, but Kuriaki revealed that it was the police themselves who had hired him to gather information on Shuichi and paid him for his services. He also explained that the police had wanted to bring chaos back to the city of Hiroshima, as it would provide them with more opportunities for bribes from the Yakuza. Shocked and disillusioned by this revelation, Shuichi went to the forensics department, where Miyu's body was examined. He confronted one of the forensic team members, accusing them of withholding information about her death. Under pressure, the forensic team member admitted that the information had been shared only with a special police team and the secret police to allow Uebayashi to continue his criminal activities and disrupt the peace in Hiroshima City. Upon hearing this, Shuichi had always suspected that Yoshida was the secret police informant that the forensic team had mentioned. So, he returned to Yoshida's house to investigate. To his surprise, the house was uninhabited and empty. When he asked Yoshida's neighbors about him, they claimed to have never heard of anyone by that name living in the house. Shuichi realized that this was how the police and the Uebayashi gang seemed to know their every move. He knew he had to take action. The next day, Shuichi met with Kuriaki, a journalist, to plan a way to expose the corruption and collusion between the police and the Uebayashi gang. Kuriaki, who was always on the lookout for a good story, eagerly agreed to help. It didn't take long for the news to spread throughout Hiroshima City. The newspapers exposed the corruption and the extent to which the police supported the Uebayashi gang's criminal activities. Mr. Keiji, a respected community member, was furious at Shuichi's actions. But Uebayashi, the leader of the gang, simply smiled. He was more determined than ever to attack the Otani clan and declared open war against them. On the other hand, Shuichi was enjoying a peaceful day at Mao's house when he was suddenly arrested by members of the police. Meanwhile, Uebayashi and his gang were preparing to launch a surprise attack on the Otani clan headquarters. Just as Uebayashi was about to leave, he was visited by the ghost of Hajime's young wife. She had died previously, but now she appeared to him to plead with him to stop the war with the Otani clan. But Uebayashi did not heed her words and shot her without a second thought. At the police station, Shuichi was being held for no apparent reason. The police who had arrested him was acting bizarrely, as they didn't approve of his heroic actions. But fortunately, he managed to escape by jumping out of a window and stealing one of the police cars he encountered. At the same time, Uebayashi and his gang were already outside the Otani clan headquarters, ready for a violent confrontation. Soon after, the two rival groups, Uebayashi's gang and the Otani clan, engaged in a fierce gunfight. But soon, Uebayashi heard the sound of a horn from a police car driven by Shuichi. Then they turned their attention to fighting each other. Shortly after, Uebayashi got into his car and invited Shuichi to take the fight to a quieter location. Driving recklessly, he intended to crash his car into Shuichi's. But, in the end, he ended up crashing. As Shuichi approached the overturned car, Uebayashi ambushed him from behind, and they engaged in a fierce hand-to-hand fight. But before things could escalate further, Mr. Keiji intervened, stopping the fight. He declared that Uebayashi would go free while Shuichi would be arrested and jailed for causing harm to civilians. Unexpectedly, Shuichi walked closer to Mr. Keiji and, in a split second, he pulled out his gun and shot Uebayashi, killing him. But Shuichi had cleverly used Mr. Keiji as a shield, so he could avoid any charges for the murder. According to the law, it was Mr. Keiji who had killed Uebayashi. In the end, Shuichi managed to eliminate Uebayashi, who had been trying to disrupt the peace he had been protecting all this time, to realize the late Sogo's ideals. Mr. Keiji, who witnessed this, attacked him, beating him until he fainted. Several months later, Yoshida was seen gambling and winning a bet. As he said goodbye to go home, he was suddenly hit by a truck and died instantly. Not long after, Ma was seen walking away from the scene, finally able to avenge Toko's death, which had been caused by Yoshida's betrayal. The film closes with a shot of Shuichi on patrol in a remote village. He has been released from the Hiroshima City Police Force and has been transferred to this small village as a police officer. He can finally live in peace and quiet in this remote community. The film ends. The moral message that we can learn from this film is that we should be cautious about whom we trust. Before trusting